Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Jacobs, and you're listening to Juiced Sports Radio. And the 2012 Final Four set to be played in New Orleans is all ready to go, as Kansas wrapped up the final spot in the final pairing, defeating North Carolina without Kendall Marshall, using a 12-0 run to end North Carolina's season. And with that, Kansas joins Kentucky, Louisville, and Ohio State in New Orleans next weekend, as 4 teams are left to vie for college basketball's ultimate prize. The Jayhawks and Tar Heels were tied at 47 apiece in a wild first half, and it slowed down considerably in the second half as points became at a premium, and the lack of Kendall Marshall definitely hurt North Carolina. There were times when his backup Stillman White just wasn't getting it done. He was trying to get threes, he missed. He was trying to go down the lane, he got blocked. Just plays that you would have thought Kendall Marshall would have been a difference maker, but he wasn't there. As for Syracuse, they didn't have Fab Melo, and Michigan State didn't have a key player. So at the end of the day, it's a big game of what if. You can only play with who you have, and North Carolina lost with the team that they brought to the floor on Sunday. So with that, we have a power-packed Final Four, at least 8 Final Four appearances for the remaining 4 schools. That's impressive. Each team has been a number 1 seed this decade. That's also impressive. And each team has been to the Final Four this decade. So instead of years past where we had matchups like VCU and Butler, where teams like George Mason snuck into the field, this year is a heavy, power-packed coaching dream. There's just one Final Four team that's a 1 seed, Kentucky, 2 2 seeds in Ohio State and Kansas, and a 4 seed in Louisville. And the surprising team of the bunch has to be the Cardinals, considering the fact they've now won 8 straight games to end the season, including the Big East crown. But before the Big East tournament, they definitely didn't look like an elite team. But here they are. Rick Pitino has done a masterful job coaching them up. Every team in the field has won a national championship. Kentucky last won in 1998, the year after Tubby Smith took over. Louisville won in 1986, Ohio State all the way back in 1960, and who can forget Kansas, winning it all in 2008 behind Mario Chalmers' unbelievable tying 3. Probably the best national championship we've had in years. The last few have been okay. And they won in overtime over the Memphis Tigers, who were coached by John Calipari, who will look to take Kentucky to a national championship that basically he was promising them after they gave him that massive contract. Kentucky is the 5th youngest team in the nation. They did not look like it. They are unselfish. They make great decisions. There's so much athleticism on that team. And when they got out and ran on a pretty athletic Baylor team today, it was game over. Kentucky started out down 10-5. Baylor started turning the ball over a little bit. And the Wildcats began looking like the Miami Heat. Just unbelievable speed and quickness, and almost as if Baylor was like, holy crap, we're playing Kentucky. And I believe Kentucky went on something like a 16-0 run, and by then it was pretty much over. That was it for Baylor. Louisville had an outstanding comeback in Phoenix yesterday, knocking out Florida to win the West, outscoring the Gators 23-8 the last 10 minutes of the game, and Russ Smith was the big hero for the Cardinals. And Ohio State and Syracuse played an excellent game yesterday as well, with Syracuse coming up short. Ohio State was a top 10 team, as were many of these teams. In fact, the only team not to be a top 10 team to start this season of the Final Four, Kansas, which was ranked 13th. So the Final Four to be played on Saturday will be a pair of rematches. Louisville and Kentucky know each other quite well. They play each other every year. Obviously, Rick Pitino used to coach at Kentucky, so that will be a compelling, exciting matchup. I still expect Kentucky to win that game. I just think Kentucky's too much. Louisville's playing hot, and the Big East has done well in the last few years, but Kentucky's just a different type of animal. They are Wildcats. As for Kansas and Ohio State, one of the few picks I made correct in this tournament was taking the Jayhawks. Now, why did I pick Kansas to win it all? Because for some reason, Kansas plays better when less is expected of them. I know they played a little sluggish in their last 2 games before beating North Carolina, but Kansas is a team that's better when they're not under the gun. And Ohio State is going to be just as popular a pick as Kansas to win the next game. And I believe that Kansas is a very talented team. I know Kansas is a little bit of a skittish team, but I like Elijah Johnson. The guy has clutch written all over him. He could be their Mario Chalmers should they get to the national championship game. Jeff Withy is a great interior defender. Thomas Robinson, Travis Relaford, they're a deep team. But I think this should be one heck of a game. So basically I have Kentucky playing Kansas, and I don't know why, but I'm going to go with Kansas to win it all. I think Kentucky's a great team, and I think they could very well prove me extremely wrong, but I picked Kansas from the get-go. I'm going to stick with what I picked. The final AP rankings before the NCAA Tournament began, Kentucky was 1, Kansas was 6th, Ohio State was 7th, and Louisville was there at 17. So all top 20 teams into the Final Four. If you look at the preseason AP rankings, Kentucky was 2nd, Kansas was 13th, Ohio State was 3rd, and Louisville was 9th. And if you add up all the national championships between these 4 storied programs, they have 13 of them. Pretty good numbers. So this should be an awesome Final Four. You're going to get plenty of fans from each basketball team that comes out and supports their school. It should be a raucous atmosphere in the Benz Superdome in New Orleans. My name is Scott Jacobs. You've been listening to Juiced Sports Radio. 4 teams left to vie for the national championship. Who do you have winning it all, and which game do you think will be better on Saturday night? Good night, everybody.